All right, now this video is one that I've done before, and it again talks about the Tacoma housing market. And I do these often because I get people who constantly are looking for, they're relocating here. And so that's part of it. The other part is my sister is also looking to move to the area. And so I do these to kind of just broadcast that out there and let her know kind of what's up to. So it kind of just does two things at one time. And if I have the time to do it and run across information, then I'm able to pass it amongst everyone. But Tacoma last year was named the hottest housing market, right? Or actually it was earlier this year. But since last year, it has been in the top 5, okay? It has continued that top 5 ranking as the most competitive housing market. That and Oakland, California are the only 2 cities that have remained in the top 5, right? Both Tacoma and Oakland have a lot of similarities. They're outside of the Golden Child cities. And they're both looked down upon as gritty, nasty, and disgusting, even though that's just not the case. Or they're looked at as crime-ridden. That's just not the case. You're going to have crime in San Francisco a lot. I've been to San Francisco. It's a great city, but there's a lot of crime, a lot of social ills too. Same thing with Seattle. Both have similar stances. However, Tacoma and Oakland are looked at in such a negative light that it just doesn't make sense, right? That doesn't mean that those cities don't have their own issues, but apparently they're doing something right because both of those cities have remained extremely competitive. And people will say, well, that's due to San Francisco being so expensive and so people have no choice. And the same thing with Tacoma. Seattle is so expensive so people have no choice. Right. That's true. I mean, that's kind of the point. So people know that they can get a better deal someplace else. They're going to go there. And over time, that entire neighborhood, that city changes. And you're seeing much more development happen. Well, this is starting to continue for Tacoma, right? Not only are we attracting more companies down here, but the city keeps working and chipping away at things that make a lot of good practical sense. You know, again, people talk about the waterfront and where there used to be toxic sludge and all this other contamination and blah, 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 blah. Let me tell you something. Most people can care less about that as long as it's not happening today. I mean, if we based everything on what happened in the past, there'd be a lot of people that would be doing things a lot different. So Tacoma today doesn't have those smelter plants and all that stuff. I mean, they spent a load of money to fix all that. And today you have Point Ruston, the development, not the city, but Point Ruston development. And you also have Dunes Peninsula that sits there. Now it's in the soil, but so is a lot of places in the US. There was a time, and I remember, I'm 41, when cars used to use leaded gas. So that's in the soil too. Another topic. But anyhow, so because people talk about, well, you can't have a garden because, well, then if that's the case, a lot of the US is going to be in dire straits because cars used leaded gas not that long ago. I mean, let's just be real. I mean, there's a reason why people do raised beds. But anyway, you don't care about that. So Tacoma is ranked the number 4th city for competitiveness. Now, it is the Amazon effect because it's starting to happen in 2 other locations where Amazon is located. Amazon put its second headquarters in DC. And so now you're seeing 2 cities now being very competitive. And those in the area of DC. Alexandria, Virginia is number 1. Number 2 is Arlington, Virginia. And so they're basically feeling the effects of Amazon. So now the prices there are becoming very competitive because it's a lot cheaper to live there as opposed to DC. DC has one of the highest housing costs in the country. It's not the highest, but it's pretty high. So now you're seeing these outlying areas, these suburbs, start to bulk up in price because people are looking at that as an option. They're wanting to move there because a lot of folks are coming in. They're moving to the area because of Amazon, and so they're looking for housing prices, right? The next one is Grand Rapids, Michigan. And I don't know enough about Grand Rapids, Michigan or what's going on there, but it's ranked number 3 as far as competitiveness. Number 4 is Tacoma, Washington. And of course, again, Amazon has a lot to do with that because the prices up in Seattle are so expensive. Even with price dips, it's going back up again. But even with the price dip, you're still getting a whole lot more bang for your buck. I mean, even if you took a house that's $500,000 in both places, whether you choose in Tacoma, you can choose a condo downtown for $500,000, and it looks great. It does. Looks amazing. Or if you choose a house that's in University Place or wherever, Proctor, Stadium District, pick a place. A $500,000 home, or down in DuPont, a $500,000 home here is going to look, it's going to look amazing on the inside. And you're going to have a lot of yard. $500,000 up in Seattle, you can find them, but it's not going to look that good. It just isn't. So again, what would you rather have? Lower taxes to begin with, plus a much bigger house, much more yard space, or just be up in Seattle for the sake of being in Seattle? It just doesn't make sense. So you have a lot of people saying, people again, vote with their feet if you're smart. And they choose to say, you know what, I'd rather be someplace where I can easily have a lot of house, a lot of yard, and a lot more money in my pocket at the end of the year and be able to take family trips. See, part of this too, and this is kind of where we stood on it, is not that people can't afford a house there. A lot of these folks who work at Amazon or work at other places and they are forced to live down here, look at the whole thing. They could live up there in Seattle. A lot of people could. They can make it work. But you're also sacrificing other things. You're not able to take a lot of vacations that you normally would like to have. Some people wouldn't be able to actually have a house because they couldn't afford a house up there. They have to rent. You're basically not going to have the availability of parking. I mean, at your place without having to pay money. You know, when we were calling about places down here and saying, well, how much is parking? You know, if you have a house, or not a house, but an apartment or what have you, and they said you don't pay for parking. Now, there are some places that make you do that, but it's just, to them, it's like, huh? So that's the norm up there, right? You have a lot of parks down here, big parks that are very well, I mean, it's noticeable. It's more of a family vibe. So all of those things are basically creating a situation where Tacoma's becoming still a very hot housing market. It's still there. It's not the biggest as it was just a little bit ago, but again, it's up against DC, an already very heavily populated area. And when you compare the two metros, DC's metro area is bigger than our metro area here. And so with Amazon coming in, it adds to that pressure. So of course, prices are going to go up. Now, Oakland, California obviously makes sense too because people can't afford San Francisco. It has nothing to do with one particular company there. It's just San Francisco's expensive. The tech industry has made it unattainable for a lot of people. So Oakland, California, which basically for years went in decline for many reasons, and also because of bad stereotyping, is now starting to benefit. Same thing with Tacoma. These are cities that are starting to benefit because of the negative stereotypes, which now don't necessarily fit. Again, are there problems in every community? Sure. And I laugh when people talk about everything under the sun as if it doesn't happen where they are. I don't know of one city, and I can say this with a very straight face. I'm from Bowling Green, Kentucky, a city of about 65 or 70,000 people now. And this is a city where violent crime just didn't happen back in the day that much. Just didn't really happen. That has slowly changed, but just didn't really happen. But that city has always had homeless people. You didn't see them a lot, but it always has had homeless people. It has always had crime. It has always had a lot of stuff. And this is a city in Kentucky that is not around any big cities. I mean, the next biggest city is going to be Nashville, Tennessee, which is about 65 miles away. has no direct impact at all on Bowling Green, Kentucky. Louisville, 112 or 13 miles away from Bowling Green, has no impact on Bowling Green, Kentucky. No other city, bigger city, has an impact on the city, yet it still has a lot of social ills, right? So there's not a city that a person can talk about that doesn't have homelessness. Just because you don't necessarily see it as much as you would in certain places doesn't mean it doesn't exist. The one city that I went to that didn't have a lot of, their downtown looked, I mean, I didn't even find a stick of paper, was Milwaukee, Wisconsin. I didn't find any, I mean, that's not to say that it's not, but we went all over the place. I didn't find any trash. It wasn't scary, none of that. Now, that doesn't mean that outside of downtown there's not problems, because I'm sure there are. That doesn't mean that there's not problems in downtown Milwaukee. I'm sure that there is. But when you go there, and again, I was a guest there for a few days, you know, people will say, no, that's not true. We have a tough city. And that's like it's a crown to win. It's a crown to say how tough you are. Who cares, right? At the end of the day, it is this a safe city or safe enough city for us to do business with? That type of thing. Is it a good place to live? That's what people care about. Not about how much crime you have or how much of the, nobody cares. You know, it's the same thing that goes on in Seattle. Nobody cares about the glass facades on the outside of the building. If that's the case, you're in the wrong place. What you should care about is your quality of life. Your overall quality of life. And you're going to have issues. You're going to have package thieves. You're going to have people rummaging around and stuff and stealing stuff. And you're going to have those things, because that is everywhere. Everywhere. I mean, even in the smallest of towns. My mom lived in a small town that has no stoplight. 700 people live in that town. And they've lived, that population hasn't changed in 20, 30 years. And there's still theft and things that happen there. So for people to sit and make that accusation about Tacoma, it's just funny, because of course it's going to have those things. Of course. Same thing with Oakland. Same thing with a lot of these other places. Of course they are. But those same things happen in these other cities. Seattle has a lot of crime. A lot of crime. And same thing goes for DC. Same thing goes for New York. Same thing that goes for San Francisco. They have a lot of it. But it gets highlighted in certain cities like Oakland, like Tacoma, because that's just what people are accustomed to, no matter how much that city has changed. But with that said, for those who are looking to move to the area and they're concerned about housing prices, I would say it's getting pretty serious. And I say that because we're starting to see things really more in the news, right? You're starting to see a lot of activity in the news about Tacoma in the right direction. And what's happening is people are starting to focus more on the city. You know, when people who are back in my hometown, because my sister and I talk about it a lot, start to know about Tacoma, and they start talking about the city, and they're talking about, oh, that's, you know, I'd like to live there. That's when people, two cities that aren't that big, and you start to have a lot of dialogue, people saying that, oh, I'd like to live there, I'd like to go there, and oh, it's this, that, and the other. Then that's when, you know, you kind of get a pulse of things. Because if small town places know about the city, then other people do. And they know they can't afford Seattle. And the prices here, while expensive compared to my hometown, they're not so crazy to where people can't afford it. And that's kind of the point, right? Oakland's expensive, but it's not crazy like it is in San Francisco. So I would say if you're looking to actually buy a home here, I would say you probably would need to do so in the next year or two, because it's going to be so expensive. It's already starting to climb every single year. Year over year, there's a 6% increase. That adds up. It's starting to get so expensive here that even the houses that aren't that nice are starting to go for a pretty high amount. Houses that are investor properties, you'll see in the ads, it will say investment opportunity. Those houses are now, I'm seeing, at $300,000 here in Tacoma. right? So you're starting to see, and that to me is mind-blowing, because that was exactly what was going on up in Seattle. You're starting to see that change and that shift. So I would say for folks who are really and truly interested in moving here and they're not wanting to have a price that's out of this world. Now, again, for some people, $300,000 is not that big of a deal, right? But what you're starting to see is that's coming with a house that's $300,000, but it needs a lot of work on the inside. You're going to have to hire someone that's going to go in and do a remodel because it's not really livable. You know, the other day, for example, because Noelle and I are looking possibly at moving to a different location as far as a house. Now, nothing's set in stone, but probably in a few years, we probably are looking to move in a different location. I want a place that's got a little bit more, not as a busy street. I want more privacy, that type of thing. And so we're looking at another house that is still in this area, right? But not in this area particularly, but in the South Sound, let's say that, right? And so we were just looking and glancing, and she looked at a house, or she just found a house that was in Tacoma. And the house was, I forget how much it was, but it was up there, and it had no walls. All you saw was studs. And the house was still like, I don't know, I was shocked. 280 or something like that. You know what I mean? Like, you can't live in it. I mean, you can't live in that house because it really needs a lot of work. And not just that, the bathroom was just completely just destroyed. So you would have to have that entire bathroom fixed and everything. $280,000, I think, at least. So that gives you a good idea as to what's happening here. The prices are starting to escalate pretty quickly. And in some neighborhoods, they're catching up with other parts of the city. You're having houses and you're seeing more density. Again, I talk about a yard that had one house on it, and the yard was small to begin with. Now they're putting two houses. They tore that house down. And now they're putting two houses on that lot, which is not a big lot to begin with. And the houses, I could stand like this and touch both houses. That's how close they're going to be. So you're starting to see Tacoma go the same direction as Seattle and become more dense. You're starting to see a lot more housing projects go up that are going to be very dense. Lack of parking as well. You're seeing a lot of that. So again, all of that correlates back to the fact that if you're looking for a house, I would say now would be the time to do that. Now, one of the things that, and I don't think my sister would mind saying it, one of the things, if you're able to do it, one of the things that people are doing, similar to what my sister is doing, is just coming and buying a house. And even though she may not be ready to move into it, she would just rent it out until she's ready to live in it. Therefore, she has something that's here ready, waiting for her, and she doesn't have to go through the rat race later on in 2 years when the prices are probably double what they are. So that if you're able to do that, that's something that's smart. Now, the problem with that is for people who are still looking to buy, because that's kind of what happened in Seattle. You had a lot of people from overseas buying houses here, holding on to them, waiting for the price to go up, and then they would sell them. Well, this is similar in a way, except you're going to be living in it. You have a lot of people that say, you know what, in 2 years, I want to live there, but I can't afford the house prices if they keep going up the way that they are. I'm not going to get it as good of a deal, so I'm just going to go ahead and buy a house there now and just rent it out, do whatever I need to do, and move into it later. In fact, there are some realtors in other cities, and I know this for a fact, telling people to do that. I mean, they told my sister that. Go ahead and buy it now and hold on to it. That is part of what you're dealing with. So anyhow, hope you, and you know, again, I hope my sister's not upset about that, or, you know, giving away some of the secrets, but that's what a lot of folks are doing. They're buying a house now because they know the prices are going to keep going up to a point of where they're no longer going to be able to qualify or anything. They're buying it now and holding on to it, and then they're going to move into it. So again, if you're able to do that, I would say definitely do it. If not, definitely keep a focus on certain key areas. I'm going to talk later about locations and cities that are probably going to be, the prices won't be as bad. but you're getting farther and farther and farther away from Tacoma, and you're getting that much further away from Seattle as well. So anyhow, hope you guys enjoyed this video. Make sure you like, share, and subscribe. And until next time, I will see you. Take care.